Death will eventually come after us all, human, plant, and animal. That is just a fact that all of us living on the planet will have to deal with. Or do we? There are actually animals who have the ability to seemingly defy death and continue to live on. In fact, one can actually be considered immortal. Stay tuned to find out what that animal is. And with that said, enjoy the video. Number 10. Camels. Camels are exceedingly hardy animals, but can they live after death? Of course not. In fact, no mammal has that ability. But when it comes to surviving the harshest of conditions, no other mammal can trump the camel. They have adapted to thrive in the harsh environment of deserts and have certain physical evolutions that help them to do so. They have 3 sets of eyelids and 2 rows of eyelashes to keep sand from entering their eyes, and also have the ability to completely close their nostrils during a sandstorm. But these abilities aren't what makes camels survivors, it's their humps. Depending on the species, camels have either 1 or 2 humps on their back. These humps can store up to 80 pounds of fat, which camels can actually live off for weeks, sometimes even months at a time. Also, living in the desert means they don't have ready access to water. So, when a camel does eventually find a water source, it can drink up to 40 gallons in one go. Number 9. Clams. It's not only a delicious morsel of meat that is hidden inside the tough exterior of a clamshell, therein actually may lie the secret to long life, and perhaps even immortality. There are in fact many species of clams that have mind-bogglingly long lives, and when just in the right conditions, may be able to live indefinitely. The ocean quahog clam shows exceptional longevity. One specimen called Ming was estimated to live up to 507 years in the wild. One study found that in animals aged between 4 and 192 years, antioxidant enzymes declined rapidly in the first 25 years, which includes the growth and sexual maturity stages, but afterwards remained stable for over 150 years. In addition, the level of oxidatively damaged proteins in the heart does not change significantly up to 120 years of age. And just what does all that sciencey stuff mean? Well, in simple terms, their physiology simply doesn't allow them to age after a certain point, keeping them forever young. Number 8. Deloids. Deloids are a kind of freshwater zooplankton, microscopic animals that live everywhere where there is fresh water. Again, they are the kind of animals that aren't truly immortal and can't really come back to life after kicking the bucket. But because of how much hardship these guys can survive through, they merit an inclusion to this list. They can survive literally everywhere. They have even been found in sewage treatment tanks. They can also survive nuclear blasts and extremes of temperature. And despite being water animals, they can survive for prolonged periods of time out of water, with one particular colony surviving a whole 9 years in a waterless environment. Scientists have always been puzzled about how these creatures survive the harshest of conditions. Later, they found out something truly amazing. This zooplankton actually has the ability to absorb the traits of other creatures, much like Rogue in the X-Men comics. They do this by stealing genetic material from other creatures, such as fungi, bacteria, and plants. In fact, 10% of the Deloids' active genes have been stolen from other species, and scientists think that this is the reason behind their immortality. Number 7. Arctic woolly bear caterpillar. If you get frozen alive, you'll be dead even if someone thaws you out. Not unless you're the Arctic woolly bear caterpillar. These guys actually live the most of their lives in a frozen state, and once they thaw, they act as if nothing really happened. The Arctic woolly bear can survive the polar extremes of the Arctic Circle, Canada, and Greenland for its ability to alternate between freezing, thawing, and feeding. This caterpillar has sugars in its blood that work like antifreeze and protect the cells in sub-zero temperatures. According to the site Cool Antarctica, this caterpillar will freeze and thaw approximately 7 times in its lifetime before it pupates and eventually becomes a moth during the summertime. Once in moth form, in other words, when it becomes the Arctic woolly bear moth, it'll only be alive for a couple of weeks to breed before dying shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, there's simply no coming back from that. Number 6. Wood frogs. And speaking of animals who don't die even after being turned into a popsicle, I give you the wood frog. The wood frog embraces cold weather and ensures survival by freezing up to 70% of its body, which includes its brain and even its eyes. Its heart completely stops, as do its muscles and breathing movements. By all accounts, this frog should be dead. When spring rolls around, the frog's hard body simply thaws out and reverts back to normal. This cycle is repeated over and over again each winter. According to scientists, wood frogs possess nucleating proteins, which sucks the majority of the water out of the frog's cells. At the same time, the frog's liver creates glucose, which fills its cells and operates as a thick sugary syrup to keep them from freezing solid. Water returns back to the frog's cells once their bodies warm up again. This frog's amazing ability is now being thoroughly studied, and scientists are trying to replicate the same phenomenon in humans. If successful, it could lead to numerous applications, primarily sending humans to the far reaches of the galaxy, sleeping in some form of suspended animation. Number 5. Cockroaches. Cockroaches are infamous for their tenacity. Some even go as far as saying that these insects will be the only ones left in the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust. Some even claim that they can live without their heads. Well, that last one isn't merely a claim, because they do. In fact, they can go on living for weeks sans their head. To understand how these bugs can survive decapitation, first we must understand how we fragile humans couldn't. First of all, humans bleed. Cockroaches don't have that problem. They have an open circulatory system, which translates to little to no blood pressure. Secondly, and probably obviously, the human head holds quite a bit of an important part of our body, our brain. And without it, humans will not function. Cockroaches, on the other hand, don't need their heads to breathe, as they do this process through little holes located on their bodies called spiracles. Although a headless cockroach will die of starvation eventually, it will take weeks for them to do so. Number 4. Salamanders. Different cultures from all over the world have taken salamanders to symbolize long life and immortality. People who believe in the paranormal even think that the amazing regenerative powers of this animal is nothing short of supernatural. But as always, the reason is always a bit more grounded. Amazing, yes, but it can be scientifically explained. Salamanders have the ability to regenerate any part of its body that has been chopped off. More amazingly, these regrown parts actually function the same as, or in some cases even better than the original parts. This is mainly because of a special protein found in salamanders which facilitates the replication of cells. This protein can also be found in humans, but in smaller quantities, not nearly enough to regrow a missing finger, but just enough to heal wounds. Number 3. Sea sponges. Sea sponges are animals, although you'll be forgiven if you think they are plants. These immobile aquatic animals have the longest lifespan of any known animal. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry studied the skeleton of the glass sponge found in the East China Sea and discovered that it was more than 11,000 years old. And they could possibly go further back, as some scientists now think that sea sponges were the first animals on Earth. The thing is, these glass sponges can live way longer and rarely die of natural causes. This is because one of the evolutionary advantages that this animal has, they are probably the most adaptable creature on Earth. Sponges can easily remold themselves according to their environment, giving them the ability to survive in even the most inhospitable conditions. I'm not saying that the sponge can't die. They certainly can, especially when their habitat is irreversibly destroyed or when they are predated upon. But remove human factors and predation from the equation, these hardy creatures may just go on and live forever. Number 2. Planaria. Beneath the Planaria's slimy exterior lies something that we can only call a superpower and thought only possible within the pages of a comic book. A healing factor so powerful that it rivals that of Wolverine and even Deadpool. Researchers from the University of Nottingham have demonstrated how a species of flatworm overcomes the aging process to be potentially immortal. Planarian worms have amazed scientists with their apparently limitless ability to regenerate. Researchers have been studying their ability to replace aged or damaged tissues and cells in a bid to understand the mechanisms underlying their longevity. To better understand the flatworm's immortality, we need to understand how cells regenerate in humans and other life forms. Usually, when stem cells divide, to heal wounds or during reproduction or for growth, they start to show signs of aging. This means that the stem cells are no longer able to divide and so become less able to replace exhausted specialized cells in the tissues of our body. Planarian worms and their stem cells are somehow able to avoid the aging process and to keep their cells dividing for an indefinite period of time. Number 1. Immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish, or Turritopsis dohrnii, doesn't come back from the dead. But why is it on top of this list? Simple, it never dies. Like any jellyfish, their life begins as a larva which develops from a fertilized egg. A planula swims at first, then settles on the sea floor and grows into a cylindrical colony of polyps. These ultimately spawn-free, swimming, genetically identical medusae, the animals we recognize as jellyfish, grow to adulthood in a matter of weeks. Fully grown, Turritopsis dohrnii is only about 4.5 mm across, smaller than a pinky nail. But how are they immortal? In times of danger and starvation, they just hit that reset button back to their development process and transform back into a polyp. In a process that looks remarkably like immortality, the born-again polyp colony eventually buds and releases medusae that are genetically identical to the injured adult. See you next time!